All right. Hello, early arrivals. Thank you so much for joining me today as we talk about Wildflowers of the South Bay, a virtual exploration with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. I'm going to go ahead and start our recording. Okay, we got recording. Cool. Since this is a Zoom webinar, the chat is not operational. I can't see you or hear you, but you can see me. You can drop a comment or a question in our Q&A box. If you not scroll down, but move your mouse to the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A button right in the bottom middle. Feel free to add any questions or comments as we go into that box. If you want to test it out to make sure it works, you can drop in where you're watching this from. I am coming to you live from the Santa Cruz Mountains right now, but a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is in the Santa Clara Valley area. Again, if you're not sure how to use the Q&A button, feel free to drop a message down at the bottom in the Q&A button. Also, this meeting will be recorded, so if you aren't able to stay for the whole time or want to revisit some cool parts or want to share it with a friend, it will be recorded and posted on our YouTube page, probably sometime next week. So keep an eye on our YouTube page. This program will go from 12:30 to 1:30, and there will be definitely time at the end for questions. So as we go, feel free to pop any questions or comments you have into the Q&A button down below. All right, and without further ado, let's jump in. My name is Michelle Garcia. I am the Educational Programs Coordinator for the Open Space Authority, and I'm so happy to have you join us today as we talk about Wildflowers of the South Bay. I work with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, which is a local government agency working within San Jose and, of course, the Santa Clara Valley. And we work to conserve water, wildlife, working lands, and to also connect people to nature. And one of the ways we do that is through free educational programs. We do in-person programs and we also do virtual programs. We do one virtual program on the first Friday of every month, which is today. Welcome to the first Friday of March. Oh my goodness. 2023 has gone by so fast so far, and now it's almost spring. The first official day of spring is not till about mid-March, but you know, nature does not obey our laws and dictations. Instead, it kind of goes by its own rules. And again, this webinar will be going from 12:30 to 1:30. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of our screen. I also want to acknowledge that the Open Space Authority works within lands that were originally stewarded by the Awaswas, Chochenyo, Mutsun, Tamian, and Tamian-speaking peoples. Today, we are honored to partner with the Amamutsun Tribal Band and the Muwekma Ohlone Tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area in our shared work to protect and restore the environment and connect people to the land. Today, during our program, I'm hoping to not only show you guys some common wildflowers in the Santa Clara Valley, but also hopefully give you some deeper understanding as to why these flowers are so important and maybe some history behind them. So let's jump in. Oh, another thing to note, it is our 30th anniversary. Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority has been around for 30 years now, since 1993. And so we've got a bunch of cool stuff going on. So feel free to check out some of our events as we head into springtime. I just want to note also the flowers that you see on screen right now are some cream cups and also some California poppies. We won't be talking too much about either one of those flowers during this presentation. There are so many wildflowers that we're going to see this spring. which is really exciting. I don't have all of them listed in this presentation. I have a handful of my favorites, and I don't have a ton of late spring wildflowers in this presentation. If you are interested in learning more about late spring wildflowers, we might do a program about them later this year, but might not. But if you're interested in learning about them right now, there is a recorded program on our YouTube page all about late wildflowers and when they bloom, where to see them. It's done by my wonderful colleague, Kat Hill. And so I highly recommend you check it out. Today, we're going to be talking about early bloomers and then like true kind of spring bloomers, and then maybe one or two late bloomers that I really love. But before we talk about specific wildflowers and where you can find them, I do want to take a little step back and talk about what is a flower. So flowers are really interesting. They hold a really important role in our ecosystem, and they're very important to plants. You know, it's not a coincidence that flowers are these beautiful, colorful, and fragrant little, things attached to plants. They serve a really important role, and to accomplish that role, they have to be quite beautiful and quite attractive. Flowers are the reproductive parts of plants. You might have learned about this back in high school or middle school biology, but here we go again. On the far left, you'll see a photo. It's kind of your basic anatomy of a plant, or of a flower. You've got the petals, and within the petals are the pistil and the stamen. These are going to be the main reproductive parts of the plant. This is really important to note because this serves a really important role in this plant's life cycle. If a plant is not able to reproduce, it cannot create fruits and seeds. And the way that they reproduce is by spreading pollen from plant to plant with the help of pollinators. Pollinators like hummingbirds, bees, butterflies, bats, moths, the wind, all kinds of great, there's all kinds of different creative vehicles that plants have come up with to pollinate and to spread their genetics. And so they have to be very attractive and colorful and fragrant to attract a lot of these small creatures into their blossom. So that's why flowers are so beautiful. They're trying to pollinate, they're trying to get pollinators to come in. And that's important because if a flower is not pollinated, it cannot create fruits and seeds. In this middle photo we have some pictures of rose hips. That is the fruit created by the native California rose, which we'll talk about more in this presentation. But it's just an example of a native fruiting body. Not all fruits are apples, oranges, or common fruits that we see here. Fruits are mainly just a way to encapsulate and protect a seed. These fruits get eaten, or they get spread or dispersed by whatever means, and that allows more seeds to spread. In this far right-hand picture, which we'll take a closer look at in just a second, you'll see a huge hillside of common hillside daisies, which are a native plant here, and they're growing out of a burned area. As these seeds spread, it helps store seeds in our seed bank. So the more flowers that get pollinated and are able to successfully spread their seeds, the more seeds we have in our soil, which means that our ecosystems can get restored that much more easily. Successful pollination also creates healthier plants. It means there's greater genetic diversity within each plant as they continue to spread. So flowers have a big job, and it's especially hard for them because they only have a few months. Each plant only has a few months to make sure this happens during the springtime. Some flowers are only open for a matter of hours. So they have a big job to do in a short amount of time. Not only do flowers play an important role for each plant, but they also play an important role for insects and animals. So animals, as I said, and insects are pollinators for plants. On the far left, you see a hummingbird pollinating a California fuchsia. That's that red kind of long flower. In the middle, you see a native bumblebee pollinating a soaproot plant flower. And sorry, it's a little burp. Oh gosh, I scarfed down some lunch right before this. And on the far right-hand side, you have a checker spot butterfly pollinating a mule's ear plant. It's kind of like a little sunflower looking flower. It's really beautiful. All three of these plants are considered late bloomers. The mule's ear is kind of like a mid-spring to late spring bloomer. We won't talk about a ton about each of these plants, but just know that even after the main spring season of March, April, and May, late May to June, sometimes even in July, you can still see some of these beautiful, beautiful wildflowers. So you have time to go see wildflowers. And again, if you want to learn more about each of these plants, check out our other program that we have about late blooming wildflowers. But anyways, all of these flowers are a direct food source for pollinators. Pollinators rely on the pollen and on the nectar that these flowers create. Without these flowers, they don't have food. These flowers also, as I said, create seeds, nuts, fruits, and grains in the form of seeds. And a lot of animals rely on all of those things for food and sustenance. So even once the flowers are gone and you go into summer and in early fall, these fruits are around and a major food source for animals like sparrows, birds, deers, coyotes. They all rely on the fruits from these native plants. And lastly, go back. I can't see my last bullet point down there. It's hidden. Darn. Oh, but yeah, so these flowers represent a major food source for these plants, or a major food source for these insects and animals. Lastly, all of this becomes especially important as we talk about wildflowers in the Bay Area. The Bay Area is especially prone to development. A lot of habitat in wildflowers get harmed as we continue to grow our cities, neighborhoods, and roads. And drought in wildflowers have been a very big issue in these past few years in the Bay Area. All of this is really harmful to our native plants and to our animals. We lack the resources to sustain a lot of our current native species, and it can be really harmful for them, which is why our upcoming wildflower season is going to be so important. We've happened to get a lot of rain this year, which is really, really wonderful, and also means that we might have a surplus of wildflowers. It is going to be beautiful and colorful this springtime, and they're going to smell great, and it's going to be so tempting to get out there and grab a handful of flowers. But these wildflowers are not just for us to take in, but they are also for the insects and the animals to enjoy. In fact, those insects and animals are depending on these wildflowers. Wildflowers are a major resource for our native species, and they are super important, especially as ecosystems recover from things like wildflowers. Here again, we have that image. This is an image of the eastern Santa Cruz Mountains in the Santa Clara Valley. Obviously, as you can see here, there is a lot of black branches coming out of these hillsides. Those are all plants that had been burned in a fire in 2017, where this entire hillside was just absolutely, harmed by this huge wildflower that rolled through. But as you can see, because we had a strong seed bank, because wildflowers were able to bloom and be pollinated and spread their seed, we have a really great regrowth right now. These are common hillside daisies, or monolopia is the Latin name, one of those. Because we had a strong seed bank in this hillside, we were able to have great regrowth. So these wildflowers have a big job to do. They have a big role that is really important. And like I said, springtime is their time to do it. They have a matter of months. Each wildflower has maybe a day or so to get pollinated, to create fruits and spread seeds. So wildflowers aren't just for us to enjoy, they're a necessity for this ecosystem. As I said, we have gotten a ton of rain this past winter, which is really great. I know this past week or two, I've heard a lot of talk online about how we might have what's called a super bloom this springtime. So a super bloom is kind of this rare natural phenomenon where there is an above average amount of wildflowers blooming all at once in the springtime. And scientists don't quite know what the exact recipe is for a super bloom, but one of the ingredients for a super bloom is a lot of rain. And so, because we've had a lot of rain this winter and are still getting a lot of rain, a lot of people have theorized that this year might be a super bloom for California, which is really exciting because, as I said, our resources, as we face drought and wildfires and the effects of climate change, our natural resources are being depleted and harmed, it feels like, every passing year. But the thought of a super bloom could be a great opportunity for ecosystems to have restored seed banks and a lot more resources than they normally would with all of these blooming wildflowers. Of course, it's not just great for the insects and animals when there's a super bloom, but also humans flock to open fields and open spaces to see the blooming wildflowers, which, of course, who wouldn't want to? This is an amazing phenomenon. And I think as the years go, I believe, and many scientists believe, as we continue down this road, super blooms might get rarer and rarer. And so I definitely encourage everyone to go out and see the wildflowers this spring. Again, I don't know if it's actually going to be super bloom. I'm certainly not the expert to tell you. But regardless, we'll have some beautiful wildflowers this year. The unfortunate side, or the tragedy of the super bloom, is that oftentimes, as many people flock to these beautiful, pristine open spaces, a lot of these wildflowers and super blooms can get really damaged. Areas that are known for their super blooms, like Joshua Tree, Antelope Valley, the California poppy preserves, have in the past seen some devastating effects after many people have visited their wildflower sanctuaries. Which means as people walk through the fields of wildflowers, they can trample and step on them. Sometimes they pick flowers. And that may seem like really small effects, like even gently walking through a wildflower field or picking a few as an individual might not seem like you're doing much. But as these small instances happen over and over and over again, they can have disastrous effects on wildflowers and their populations. And as we've talked about earlier, these wildflowers are important for many species of insects and animals, not just during the springtime, but for the rest of the year. And so, killing a few plants over many, many times during the springtime, during this fragile, little bit of lots of resources, can have some really harmful effects. And our super blooms have gotten smaller and smaller each time we've had one. And so when we go out and see wildflowers this spring, don't just look at a wildflower as, a beautiful little piece of color that only happens in the springtime. Wildflowers do not just represent the spring. They represent the coming of a healthy and full and resourceful year for many native species. They're not just for us to enjoy, they're a necessity for many species in our ecosystems. And they're seeding the future as well. Hopefully, a good wildflower season this year means that there are many good wildflower seasons to come. It's not just about this spring, it's about the springs of generations to come. Also, a note, this photo has a bunch of gold fields, which we'll talk about more, and a bay checker spot butterfly, which is the butterfly that you see here, which is an endangered species of butterfly that relies on wildflowers blooming in the Santa Clara Valley. So as we go out and enjoy these wildflowers that we're going to learn about today, we want to take some time to appreciate all of the wonderful things that they do. Not only are they beautiful, but they have a really important job. And so hopefully, as we start thinking about these wildflowers, we can not only appreciate their beauty, but appreciate all of the resources they provide the natural environment. So I highly recommend this spring, get out there, visit some beautiful flowers, take pictures of the wildflowers, stay on our trails, don't go walking through our wildflower meadows because we want our generations to come to also be able to see these same wildflowers. And we want our insects and our animals to be able to make use of these wildflowers. So don't just admire the beauty, but also admire all the amazing work they put out and all the resources they provide. So without further ado, let's jump into some common wildflowers in the Santa Clara Valley. Again, I will not have time to go over all of the wildflowers. There's so many, hopefully, that we'll be able to see this springtime. Again, in this photo, we have the wonderful California poppy, this bright orange cup-looking flower in the middle of a field of these wonderful purple owl's clover. Again, we won't be talking too much about the California poppy during this presentation, but we will talk a bit about purple owl's clover later on. I just want to pause and answer a few questions. So the common hillside daisies that we saw in the few photos back in that burned area, those bright yellow flowers, yes, they are growing in an area that had been burned a few years prior. That fire came through in 2017, and I think that photo was taken in 2019. So it'd been a few years later, but yes, they were blooming in a burned area. They were common hillside daisies, and California fuchsias are in fact native to the Bay Area. If you have any more questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or into the Q&A button. Oh, one more just popped up. Oh, and where can you see common hillside daisies? So again, they're pretty common. I would say one of my favorite places to see them, I've seen them at Rancho Cañada del Oro Open Space Preserve, which is off of the 101 off of Bailey Avenue. It's probably 20 minutes southeast of San Jose. And yes, these purple flowers that we see are in fact purple owl's clover. I wish I could zoom in here a little bit more, but we'll take a closer look at purple owl's clover in just a moment. All right, we're going to start with flowers that are early bloomers and move it into kind of true spring bloomers and a few late bloomers. One of my all-time favorite early bloomers is the California golden violets, aka also known as Johnny Jump Ups. I have the Latin names listed for each flower that we'll see here. I do not know how to pronounce all of them. My Latin is not great. One day I hope to be better with the Latin names of plants, but right now I'm not. So I'll give you my best. It is the host plant for the silver spot butterfly, which is the butterfly that you see in the left-hand corner here. It's kind of this brown, orange little butterfly. And when we say it's the host plant for a certain butterfly, I'm going to mention that a few times during this presentation. But basically what that means is that the larvae of the butterfly or the caterpillars of the butterfly rely on these plants as a food source. So usually the caterpillars of the silver spot butterfly will eat the leaves And they'll lay their eggs on this flower. They'll eat the leaves. They'll eat this plant until the caterpillars are big enough to turn into a butterfly. So that's without this plant, many butterfly species would not be able to thrive, specifically the silver spot butterfly. But that's not the only species of insect that relies on this plant. There's a lot of them. I really love California golden violets because they're this beautiful, deep golden yellow. And because they're early bloomers, you can see they're usually like just little golden dots in the middle of a sea of green grass. They tend to grow in colonies, so usually where you see one, you see many. And they have that classic violet shape, those 5 leaves and that kind of darker off-colored mouth that helps the insects know where the pollen is. As you see in the far right corner picture, the stem, it almost looks like the flowers are hanging on a hook. It kind of goes up and then curves down, and then there's the flower hanging down. Also, when the flower is pollinated and goes to seed, the fruit kind of explodes once it's been ripe enough, and the seeds kind of explode out. It's pretty cool. So yes, California golden violets, they're probably blooming right now. I have already started to see the golden violets in the preserves. You can see them at Sierra Vista if you hike the Aquila Trail at Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve up in middle Milpitas. So that's like northeast San Jose. And I've also seen them at Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve and at Rancho Cañada del Oro. At the very end of the presentation, I'll kind of talk more about our different specific parks and the best flowers to see at those parks. But yes, golden violets, I've definitely seen them at Rancho. I've definitely seen them at Sierra Vista. Another wonderful early bloomer is shooting stars. So shooting stars are a native flower. They're a little bit of an earlier bloomer. So you can start to see them earlier on. They might be blooming right now. They might be blooming in a couple more weeks. They are a really strange looking flower. I'm a big fan of little weird looking flowers. They're just a few inches tall, maybe 3 or 4 to 5 inches tall, long stems. They've got little oval leaves at the base. And then they kind of look like someone turned a flower inside out. The stamen and the pistil is right out in the center, and it's sticking out, and the petals shoot backwards, which is how it gets its name, a shooting star. It looks like a little shooting star moving through the atmosphere, and it's got the little stardust coming behind it. This flower is a favorite of native bumblebees. Bumblebees love to, they'll just, as you can see in this far right photo, they'll grab on to the face of the flower, and then they'll use the little bodies to vibrate, and it just shakes out all of the pollen that flower has. Because this flower doesn't have nectar, honeybees or other non-native bees don't really like it as much. So this is a great flower for our native bee species here in the Santa Clara Valley. Now let's take a quick break to answer some questions. Rancho. Oh, so for the golden violets, the silver spot butterfly is definitely one that uses it as a host plant. I'm not sure if the checker spot butterflies do. I wouldn't be surprised. But the silver spot butterflies is definitely more picky, or not more picky, but definitely uses the California golden violets pretty frequently. Oh, we had someone say that they were hiking at Sierra Vista yesterday and they saw them. I'm not sure if they were referring to golden violets or shooting stars. I'll try to be better about stopping after each flower to see if there's any specific. The golden violets, they're talking about the golden violets. I love golden violets. I do recommend going out and trying to see them. They're definitely worth an early spring cold hike. They're just beautiful. Oh, and someone also mentioned that they saw some shooting stars at Edgewood today. Edgewood County Park is an awesome park, which I will add to our list for a good place to see wildflowers. As for where you can see shooting stars, Edgewood is a great one. Rancho Cañada del Oro in southwest San Jose is a great one. Coyote Valley. Yeah. Now this is also kind of our last early bloomer is called Western Hound's-tongue. This is quite different from our two earlier bloomers. So the California golden violets and the shooting stars are both very small plants that really get to be only a few inches tall, whereas the hound's tongue can get like 2 feet tall as a plant. In the left-hand photo that we see here, you see that it has these really broad, kind of, long, triangular, rounded leaves. It got its name because people think that their leaves look like a tongue of a dog or a hound's tongue. I don't know if I quite see it. They are a part of the forget-me-not family. If you kind of know what a forget-me-not looks like, it has really similar flowers that you can see in the middle here. These rounded, oval, 5 petaled flowers, and it's got that like white marking right in the middle, also to help pollinators, to help show pollinators where the pollen is. It is a great plant for native bees, hummingbirds, moths, and butterflies. I wasn't able to find a specific insect that really favors this plant. It is just an all around. If you find this plant, you will find bugs on it. It's really great. Also, because it is a part of the forget-me-not family, it has really sticky seeds. If you have ever walked through a field and you've got like really fuzzy socks on or plants on, and you come out of that field of grassy area and you have these little like spiky balls attached to your clothing, those are forget-me-not seeds. Forget-me-not family is known for having these like really spiky seeds. You can find them on your animals sometimes if they've been running around in open field areas. And they're great for seed dispersal. Not all forget-me-nots are native. This one is. And so if you find the seed of a hound's tongue, that is a great thing. They'll start seeding, in the summertime. So hopefully we can find some great seeds there and continue to help spread their seeds. But a lot of other forget-me-nots are not native. This one is, though. Let's see if we have some questions. Oh, Santa Teresa County Park is also gotten a shout out in our Q&A. There's been some shooting stars there, also some popcorn flowers and bee plants, which is really great. We won't talk a ton about those flowers today, but they're a really great one. Santa Teresa County Park. Shooting stars at Elmet and Quicksilver as well. Let's see. Oh, someone said that the estate trail at Filoli is a good place for wildflowers. I've never heard of that. Oh, yes, and where to see hound's tongue. Thanks for reminding me. There is a lot of great hound's tongue at Rancho Cañada del Oro. If you hike the Mayfair Trail, you will definitely run into hound's tongue, probably within 50 feet of starting that trail. Although I remember the last time I hiked it, there was hound's tongue, and there was also a beehive directly next to the hound's tongue. So hike with caution, stay on the trail, give plants and animals their proper space. But yes, where you find hound's tongue, you will also likely find a lot of pollinators because there's a lot of insects that love this plant. Oh, okay. This might be the last early bloomer. This flower is called blue-eyed grass. You can see it's got this like lovely and kind of like grayish purple blue color, and it has that bright yellow center, again, to help insects find where the pollen is being kept. Although it is called blue-eyed grass, it is actually a part of the iris family. So irises have kind of like, if you were to typically think of an iris, you might think of something with like longer, pointier flower petals. This one looks a little different, a little irisy. So if you look in the far right picture, you'll see where the name blue-eyed grass comes from. The leaves of this plant are really long and tall. They look a lot like grass leaves. And even when this plant grows and is blooming, it looks kind of like a bushier, like a bunch of grass, and it happens to have these weird blue flowers growing out of it. This one is also really wonderful because you'll be walking along in early spring in an entirely green hillside, and then all of a sudden you'll just see these blue purple flowers poking out of the hillside. They really tend to like moist soil, so they like open fields but moist soil, so it can be kind of hard to find them in some of our parks, but you can definitely find them at Coyote Valley and Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve. And again, it's an earlier bloomer, so I'm not sure if any of them are out right now. They're not super early bloomers, but you should be able to find them in the coming weeks. Yes, we also had someone say that milkmaids are also one of the first to bloom. Milkmaids I've been seeing for weeks now. They're these little 4-petaled white flowers. We won't be talking about them much today, but you should definitely go out there if you see little white flowers with 4 petals. Those are milkmaids. All right, now we're getting into kind of more some of our true spring flowers. So one of my all-time favorite flowers are globe lilies. Again, I love a weird shaped flower, and globe lilies are definitely one of them. They are a type of lily, so if you know what Mariposa lilies look like, you know, a lot of lilies are kind of this like nice cup shape. And globe lilies take that to an extreme. They form in a cup just like other lilies, and then they form so much that they close up and they look like a globe or a little ball. They are also known as fairy lanterns. I was trying to look up why, you know, globe lilies grow in such this strange ball-like formation. And the only answer I could really find is that fairies live with them and live inside them, and fairies are very private, and so they like to keep it all closed up. If you do see a globe lily kind of open, as you can see in this far right-hand photo, they've got all kinds of these little hairs growing on the inside of the petals, and those are all little stamens. And so as beetles or small insects crawl in there, they will get the nectar, and they will also start to pollinate as they crawl inside their little globe and hang out with their little fairy friends that live inside them. They are beautiful, beautiful little plants. Again, they're not quite blooming yet. They're going to be kind of like a true spring bloomer. But what you probably will see along the hillsides right now is, especially if you're hiking at Rancho Cañada del Oro, you'll see on these hillsides one like long, flat green leaf kind of sticking out of the hillside or sticking out of the ground. And it'll look a little odd. It's just one big green leaf. That will soon be a globe lily. There'll be a globe lily sticking out of that soon. So if you're hiking at one of our preserves, you see kind of one random, just like straight flat green leaf growing out, that's going to turn into a globe lily. And so come back to that same spot in, you know, maybe a few weeks at the end of March, and you'll hopefully see a globe lily. Once they turn into seeds, they dry out, as you can see in the far left-hand corner, and there will be seeds inside that pod. Questions about globe lilies? Oh, right. Our next flower. Purple's owl's clover. We've come back to it. I really love purple owl clover. It's such an odd looking plant. I come from San Diego, California, and where it's a little bit more of a desert climate. And so it's been so fun to be living here and learn all of these new flowers. Purple owl's clover is in the paintbrush family. As you can see, it's kind of like this long, like really bushied flower. You can almost imagine like picking one, which we would never do, but you could almost imagine picking one and like dipping it into some paint and using it as a paintbrush, which is how it got its name, or which is how that family got its name. Why this specific plant is called owl's clover is unknown, or at least unknown to me. I guess you might be able to say it's kind of round. It looks like an owl's head. I'm not sure, but it's definitely purple. It's really interesting because there's not only purple flowers in it, but a lot of what you're seeing is the leaves of the purple owl's clover have purple tips, or purple or white tips at the very end. And so it looks like the whole thing is, the whole like head is flowering, but a lot of them are just leaves that are purple colored. But again, that helps attract more pollinators, so more power to it. All or most of the plants in the paintbrush family are slightly parasitic. And so they will use their root systems, or a specialized root system, to attach to the roots of another plant and siphon nutrients from it. Although the purple owl's clover, sometimes you can see it like growing in small bunches. You'll see 4 or 5 purple owl's clover, but other times, as you see in this far right-hand photo, you will have a whole field of purple owl's clover, and it baffles me because it is supposed to be a parasitic plant. You'd think there'd be more plants, more other plants near it, so that it can, you know, gain nutrients from the plants, but there's often not. And so hopefully that means that it is actually taking nutrients from grasses that also grow in that field. And a lot of those grasses are not native grasses. So we got a win for our native plants here. Purple owl's clover, thriving in open grassy fields. This is a super important plant for butterflies and moths. This is one of the preferred plants for many butterflies and moths to lay their eggs, and for larvae to eat the leaves and to grow nice and big and strong. Even checker spot butterflies, or the bay checker spot butterfly, will sometimes use this plant. It has been found, but they have a different preferred plant, which I think is up next. Yes, the dwarf plantain, or the California plantain, is the preferred plant for the endangered bay checker spot butterfly. So the bay checker spot butterfly will lay its eggs, and the caterpillars will eat the leaves and grow mostly from this plant. So the dwarf plantain, unfortunately, does not grow any form of a plantain. That's just its name. It basically looks like if you kind of spray painted most of a Q-tip green and stuck it in the ground. That's basically what these look like. They are very small plants. They only grow a few inches tall. And their flowers are this almost, as you can see in the middle, their flowers are almost this like white or almost translucent color. They're not super showy flowers, but they're very important. As I said, the bay checker spot is an endangered butterfly. And one of the reasons it is endangered is because so much of this plant, so much of the dwarf plantain's habitat has been destroyed or built on top of. The dwarf plantain thrives in serpentine soils. As we kind of talked about at the very top, serpentine soil is a type of soil found in California that is very nutrient poor. But because it is so nutrient poor, that's actually a good thing for a lot of native plants, because these native plants have been especially adapted to thrive in these nutrient poor environments. And so the dwarf plantain loves to grow in serpentine areas because it doesn't need a lot of nutrients. But unfortunately, just like the rest of the Bay Area, a lot of its habitat has been built over, or if serpentine soils get polluted, there's added nitrogen in the mix, there's trash, there's extra debris, nutrients are added to the soil, which means that other plants can also thrive there, and they often outcompete the dwarf plantain. So the dwarf plantain has had a really rough go of it, which means that the bay checker spot butterfly is also losing habitat and plants that it can use. But there's a lot of this at this place called Coyote Ridge, which is very cool. There's lots of serpentine habitat there. There's also a lot of this at Rancho Cañada del Oro Open Space Preserve. There's a good amount of serpentine areas there as well, especially if you hike, if you go to Rancho Cañada del Oro and then cut into Calero County Park on the Long Wall Canyon Trail, and you go all the way down it until it turns into Rancho Cañada del Oro. You keep going down that trail and you'll hit this rocky hillside. And a lot of that rocky hillside is serpentine, and you will be able to see the dwarf plantain there. So this is not a very common plant. You won't have a ton of chances to see it. And so if you want to see this, definitely check out Rancho and other serpentine habitat areas. Oh, yes. So we've got a question. Will these slides be available? What is the best reference to identify these flowers? The slideshow itself won't be available, but this video will be posted on YouTube later on. If you want like a really good field guide, there's a ton of books about wildflowers in the Bay Area. The Open Space Authority, the agency that I work for, actually just came out with a really nice wildflower like fact sheet with lots of pictures, and that's going to be available on our website if you want to check that out. It's available for download, and it has photos and kind of tidbits about where you can find these different plants and when they're blooming. Check it out. Now, another really like true spring wildflower is this beautiful flower called goldfields. Goldfields are in the Asteraceae family. So the same family as mule's ear, the same family as sunflowers. It's got these beautiful pointy yellow petals. And in the middle, you see in this middle photo, the center of the flower kind of looks like a bunch of yellow to orange dots. Those are actually, each dot is actually its own tiny, tiny flower, which means there's that much more nutrients available to these flowers, or there's that much more nutrients in these flowers available to insects and butterflies. There's so many butterflies and insects that love this plant. And you can find this plant pretty commonly in the springtime in the Bay Area. Sometimes you can see them in little groups standing on their own, and other times you can see whole just yellow fields of gold fields. That's how they get their name. There'll be these huge yellow fields, and they're all gold fields. They're found across California, and they are also able to thrive in really poor soil conditions. Sometimes you can find them in serpentine habitats or near serpentine habitats. Coyote Valley is a great place to see gold fields. So is Rancho, so is Sierra Vista. There's lots of good ones. I will say in this photo in the far right-hand side, there are gold fields in there, but there's also this other flower called tidy tips, which we won't be talking about too much today. But if you look really closely in this photo to the far right-hand side, you'll see these yellow flowers with these white tips on the very edges. Those are tidy tips. All right, it is 1:16 by my watch. We're supposed to end at 1:30. Let's see what other flowers we can talk about. And then for 5 minutes, I'm going to leave 10 minutes to go through any remaining questions. Here we have the California rose. We had a question, which flowers are the most fragrant? In my opinion, the California rose is one of the most fragrant native wildflowers that we have. Of course, there's a bunch of them, but yeah, the California rose, it's a native rose species, have these beautiful lacy leaves. They can be pink or white. Of course, they don't look like your normal typical garden rose. This is a native rose. And so they just have those 4 petals and all of those little inside bits that insects love. As we saw before, once they go to seed and fruit, roses create these rose hips They are very high in vitamin C, and they're a super important food source for deer. Yes, and other woodland animals. Another favorite of mine is lupine or lupin. The word lupin comes from the Latin word wolf. We're not sure why they named this flower lupine. It might be because the profile of the flower, as you can see in this middle picture, kind of looks like ears and then a dog's snout kind of sticking out. This is a part of the legume family, which means that it is nitrogen fixing, which means it takes nitrogen from the air and puts it into the soil, which makes that soil healthier for other plants in the area. They can grow really tall. They can grow to like a couple feet, not a couple, yeah, like 6 inches to a foot tall. And yeah, there's these beautiful white and purple flowers. Fiddlenecks, we're getting into some of our later bloomers. Fiddlenecks aren't your typical looking flower. They're a little bit more unique. They're named fiddlenecks for their long kind of curly stems that look like the end of a fiddle or the end of a violin. And the flowers are all curled up inside there. And there are a ton of insects like this ladybug larva that we see in this far right photo that thrive on fiddlenecks. It's also known as rancher's fireweed because it can grow really fast and really tall, and it's not good for cattle or horses to eat. And so ranchers have long since battled this native plant. One of my all-time favorites is called Elegant Clarkia. Elegant Clarkia is this strange alien-looking like flower that you see. It's got these weird 4 petals that are really long and then all of a sudden really big at the very ends. The Latin name for Elegant Clarkia means little red claw / red nail. That's thought to be referencing the anthers at the very end that's in the middle of this flower, or just the strange claw-like petals. Other Clarkia species are also kind of this like pink, purple, fuchsia color that we see here. But Elegant Clarkia is the only version of this flower that has these strange looking petals. This is a kind of a late bloomer, and so it's so much fun to think that all the flowers are done blooming and then just stumble across this alien looking flower. It's very cool. I also really love this plant because it's a really important species for moths. Moths will lay their larvae on these, especially moths like the sphinx moths will lay larvae on here, as well as their Mariposa foster moth. And that's really cool. I love a nice little hairy butterfly like moths. In the far left-hand corner, you can see the caterpillar of a Mariposa foster moth munching on an Elegant Clarkia. And at the very bottom right, you will see an actual picture of the Mariposa foster moth. All right, and last but not least, we have the blazing star. The blazing star is a late bloomer. It is also pretty fragrant, which is nice. It opens in the late afternoon, which is a bit odd for some plants, and it stays open all night long. It's a huge yellow flower. The bloom itself is about 3 inches wide, and each plant itself can have up to 35 flowers growing on it. It's a beautiful plant, and because it's a late bloomer, it's a really important nutrient resource for many plants and for many insects and animals. And also, blazing star is not commonly found throughout California. It's really just in this like South Bay area. If you want to see some, you can find them at Rancho Cañada del Oro, or you can check out Sierra Vista. It's my favorite time. That's my favorite place to see these, is at Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve. So as I said, you can see flowers at Sierra Vista, Rancho Cañada del Oro, Coyote Valley, Open Space Preserve. Those are the 3 preserves that are open year-round that we manage. But other great options for wildflower viewing are Hulastack Natural Area, Santa Teresa County Park, Calero County Park. And those are all local to the Santa Clara Valley. If you want to venture just outside of the Santa Clara Valley, Henry Coe State Park and Mount Diablo State Park are 2 amazing places to see wildflowers. Mount Diablo is a little bit further north in the East Bay. It's part of the Diablo Mountain Range. There are beautiful wildflowers there. And then Henry Coe State Park is a huge state park, also in the Diablo Mountain Range, a little south of San Jose. Both of them have like open grassy meadows and oak woodlands where all of these flowers love to thrive. If you want to make a trip of it, and my favorite personal place to see wildflowers in California is actually this place called Anza Borrego State Park. It is the largest state park in all of California, and in my opinion is underrated. It has a really similar ecosystem to Joshua Tree National Park, but it's much less visited. And so if we continue to get a lot of rain, and there are a lot of wildflowers blooming in the desert, Anza Borrego State Park is a great option for those who might want to avoid the crowds, of course, be respectful to wildflowers, and check out some desert flowers. Of course, you probably won't see a lot of the flowers that I talked about today at Anza Borrego State Park. You'll learn about all kinds of other cool flowers. All right, we've got 5 minutes. What are your questions? What have you got for me? Let's see. Which flowers are most fragrant? The blazing stars smell really good. I really love the smell of California rose. Another early bloomer we didn't really talk about are manzanitas. Manzanitas have been blooming throughout January and February, and they smell amazing. Also, a great tip mentioned in our comments is that if you are out in a preserve or a park and you don't know what a wildflower is, iNaturalist and Seek are 2 free apps you can download on your phone, or you can take a picture of this wildflower and it will identify it for you, or at least give you some suggestions or help you identify it. So I highly recommend using those apps. It's much better than picking a flower. That flower has put in a lot of work to be there, and so taking a picture of it and posting it somewhere where people can record that data is super valuable. So download iNaturalist Seek and use it when you go out wildflower hike. Coyote Peak in Santa Teresa Park is also a good place for goldfields. Yes, I love all of these recommendations. Santa Teresa is an awesome place for wildflowers. What are some good locations to see carpets/fields of flowers? There are a lot of good ones. I've seen a lot of really nice carpets at Calero County Park. You can see some really good ones. Also at Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve is a great place to see some like really nice carpets of flowers. And honestly, Henry Coe State Park can have amazing wildflower blooms. I mean, like as far as the eye can see, sometimes you can see just like hillsides of color. So I highly recommend checking that out. It's huge. There's tons of trails, beautiful wildflowers out there. Will these be available on YouTube soon? Yes, it will definitely be available on YouTube. We'll finish the recording at the end of this session, and it should get posted sometime later this week, next week. As I said, there's also a whole other webinar about late blooming flowers if you want to learn more about them, that's already on there. So feel free to, watch that in the meantime while you wait for this to post. Oh, someone asked the best source to buy wildflower seeds. I'm not sure. I don't have a specific one place in mind, but a lot of local plant nurseries will have native wildflower seeds, especially native lupin species. That's a really popular garden variety. But I would check your local plant nurseries. I don't have a specific one or a specific resource. Oh yes, someone also said that there's lots of elegant Clarkia that bloom at Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. I've seen them at Coyote Valley, and I've also seen them at Rancho Cañada del Oro. I remember the first time I saw those weird looking elegant Clarkia with the 4 petals. I was like, what's wrong with this flower? Something must have done, like it must have been destroyed, but that's just how it looks. It's so cool. Oh, nice. Yes, someone also posted the link for the wildflower guide. If you go to the Open Space Authority website, our wildflower guide, it's right on there. Nice. Oh, someone asked, how do we track when blooms are happening at these parks? Uh, one great way to track when blooms are happening is if you follow, or at least if you follow the Open Space Authority on Instagram, we will start talking about when flowers are starting to bloom. And hopefully that's the same case for other parks as well. They'll kind of start posting when the wildflowers are starting to bloom. But honestly, the best way to find out when they're blooming is to just get out there and see it. Um, the wildflowers are already starting to bloom. You can already start to see some of them. And so the best chance you have at trying to figure out when and where and how they're bloom is to just go and check out these parks. I know this Monday is going to be like pretty good weather, lots of sunshine. And then this next coming week will be kind of overcast and cloudy. So maybe not this coming week, but the week after. Hopefully we'll get lots of sunshine. And you'll probably start to see a lot of these wildflowers already. It's also like a hit or a miss. You can call and ask staff's opinion, but like I said right at the beginning, Mother Nature does not obey us and our laws. She's got her own rules that she's playing by. And so sometimes the wildflower season takes us by surprise. Things bloom late, things bloom early. We don't know the secret recipe for wildflower blooms. Sometimes they just happen. So go out into the parks and check them out. Oh, and I can't not mention that Almaden Quicksilver is also a really, really great place to not only learn a little bit of history, but also see beautiful wildflowers. Other grilled wildflower places are Coyote Lake County Park, DJ Grant County Park, Sierra Azul Open Space Preserve. That's with the Mid Peninsula Open Space Open Space Authority. So that's like the Santa Cruz Mountains. Really, really beautiful wildflowers there. I really like Russian Ridge Open Space Preserve. They've got big open fields of wildflowers there as well. Buckeye trees also have fragrant flowers, and they're a late bloomer. So if you're looking for a nice fragrant wildflower in late spring, check out buckeyes. This program will be recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube. Check out Open Space Authority on YouTube. We've got all of our programs recorded there. Also, do remember that our preserves are managed by field staff. There's no need to go out and plant other plants or spread seeds in a land that you don't manage. So if you're please don't collect any seeds from our preserves or spread any seeds in our preserves. Oh, someone mentioned that they live in Borrego Springs, right next to Anza Borrego State Park, and wildflowers are already blooming abundantly 2 weeks ago. So that's really great to hear. Yeah, a lot of places like in and around that area, like Joshua Tree, get really highly impacted during the wildflower season. And so if you want to kind of spread them out a little bit, Anza Borrego is an awesome place. Shout out to Southern California. Oh, we are also indeed offering in-person wildflower hikes at the Open Space Authority preserves. The second Saturday of every month, we have a wildflower hike at Rancho Cañada del Oro. The first Saturday of every month, we're having a hike at kind of various different preserves, but they'll be somewhere in the Santa Clara Valley. We've doing hikes at Diablo Foothills, Little Uvis Open Space Preserve. If you want to be kept in the loop about all of our events that we do, please go to our website and check out the events tab. You can sign up for emails, and then you will be the first to know when new events pop up and when you can sign up and where to check out all of these cool events. So sign up for our newsletter, check out our events page. All of our events are always free, so you don't have to pay to join them. Yes, the CNPS website has a list of really great nurseries. CNPS stands for the California Native Plant Society, and they just are a great resource on all things native plants and native wildflowers. The California Native Plant Society Wildflower Show will also be happening very soon, and that will be a really, really great event. Big thank you to everyone who joined. Thanks to everyone who joined and saying thank you. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Marshall Cottle County Park. Marshall Cottle County Park gives out wildflower seeds. That's awesome. Check it out. Marshall Cottle is also just a really great park in general. Definitely visit. I'm not sure when Russian Ridge Open Space Preserve will be open this year. That one's managed by Mid-Peninsula Open Space Authority, which is just a different agency. So I'm not sure. They've had a lot of issues with the recent rains. So be patient with them. They're trying their best, I'm sure. Let's see. We also got a comment saying that for Central and Southern California, there is a wildflower hotline. That's cool. The wildflower hotline is 818-768-1802. All right, our last question that we got is, when will Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve be open? Now, Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve is an area that we manage in the Diablo Foothills. It's got beautiful serpentine soils, and it will be opening this year for public use, which is really, really exciting. We're gonna have a parking lot and a restroom and new trails. I can't say when it will be opening this year, but it will in fact be opening this year. Hopefully by the fall, we will be able to have some kind of cool opening. You can read more about it on our website. And again, if you want to be the first to know when events are happening, or just when updates are happening about our parks, like when Coyote Ridge will be opening and we'll be doing events there, sign up for our newsletter, go check out our events page on our website. That is the best place to learn the newest information. But yes, Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve will be opening later this year, hopefully in the fall. Check out our website for more info. All right, thank you all so much. Sorry we went a little bit over, but it's been wonderful having you all join me today. Join us for more events coming up soon. All right, thanks everyone. Stop sharing. I hope you all have a wonderful day and stay dry this weekend. Stay out of the rain. Bye.